I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Public Safety Committee for March 26, 2024. Welcome, everybody. I just want to advise that we do not have quorum in the room. We do have a member who's on screen, but for New York State law, that doesn't count. So we're hoping we will have another committee member appear. But in the meantime, I did want to at least address some of the items that we have before us. The first is public comment. We have one person who submitted a blue sheet. And what I'd suggest is come up and talk to us, and if we do get quorum, I'll let you speak again.
Okay. Here's Mike.
Yes. And you've read the rules.
Yes.
So, and you've been here before, so I know you know.
Well versed in the rules.
Right, the new rules. Yeah.
I'm Amanda Kirch-Gessner. I live in the town of Ulysses, and I'm here to talk about public safety. And I am concerned. We've spent a lot of money on public safety lately. We have the CJC, we're expending tons of dollars. The county's stepping up to fund an on-site social worker property manager for the Asteri project and the art house, if I understand correctly. Yeah, the county's expending a lot of money because of shortcomings in public safety, largely in the city of Ithaca, it seems. And I took myself to the Easter egg hunt that the Ithaca police put on this Sunday, which was an awesome community event. There were close to 200 people there, I would say. Lots of kids, really diverse group. It was great. Anna Ortiz had a bunch of the kids from her program down there. The cops were kind enough to give them rides. It was really sweet and adorable. But I must say I'm profoundly concerned because I only saw one elected office holder at the event, and I didn't see anybody from the CJC at the event. And I understand the Ithaca Police Department isn't the responsibility of the legislature, but the fact that nobody who holds office in the city of Ithaca was at the event was profoundly concerning to me. George McGonigal was there, but he's no longer a representative. Mike Sigler was there. I actually came here to thank him for being there because I think it is important that people who associate with public safety actually show up for government employees who are a crucial component of public safety. And I just would like to ask if anybody in this room wants to volunteer to be the individual who's tasked with responding to somebody having a psychotic episode while wielding a machete at a Walmart, for instance, because that's what we put on our local public safety officers. And if you feel like you're equipped to do that, awesome. We'll have 911 go to you direct. But if you're not comfortable taking that responsibility, I would strongly encourage you to start showing up to support government employees who are tasked with the responsibility of being our first line of defense for community health, safety, and wellness. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and as I said, if we get quorum, I'm happy to let you speak again. Are there any changes to the agenda? Anything? Okay. We have minutes, but we can't approve them. I understand we do have another member on the way, so we'll see when they get here.
Sigler's online now.
Oh.
That matters for quorum.
Yeah. Welcome, Mike. You're on mute.
Hi. Hey, how you doing?
Good.
Sorry, I got called away for something at work. I can be in a half hour if you need me to be there.
Yeah, we do.
We have another person.
We do not have quorum. And I don't, okay. Shauna is online as well, but I don't know where she is.
She's riding and she's turning around and coming back.
Oh, okay. All right. What I would suggest is that we recess the meeting for enough time for either Mike or Shauna to arrive. The one issue that I'd like to make sure we cover is we have our assigned counsel director here with us, and he's got a court appointment at 2 o'clock. So while you guys are online, why don't we have him come forward and give his report, and we'll make sure that he's able to talk with everybody. Derek.
Sorry, Rich, if Under Sheriff Owen is still trying to get into the meeting, we could elevate her.
She needs to accept the invitation. She's in. All right.
There we go.
It's like Mission Impossible. She's gotten in. Okay. Lance, welcome to the meeting.
Thank you, Rich. I'm actually have a short kind of series of updates. The big news, excuse me, is additions to our panel. I think I'd mentioned this in emails to people. I know I've talked about it with Lisa and Bridget. We added one new attorney in February when she was sworn into the bar. We were excited. We'd spent a long time recruiting her, and we've added, this month, we've added another 6 attorneys. We were lucky. A mix of a couple newer attorneys that are associates at a firm in Ithaca, and then the former public defender in Cortland is going to come on board and do some work for us. And we've added 3 people from a firm in Auburn, 2 of whom are experienced. They're former ADAs in the Cuyahoga County DA's office. All 3 are relatively experienced attorneys, so, which was nice. They can step right in and handle a lot more than newer attorneys can. We have to kind of train them up. So that'll be a nice, it's a nice addition to the panel moving forward. We've got a 7th person who's expressed interest as well that we're working with. We always vet, we have to vet people before we can just bring them on board. On that, so that's I think the big news. Administration asked me why the jump. In part, I think it's been a process of recruitment and word of spread. Typically it's the way with the out-of-town attorneys. We've added a couple. We already have an attorney. We have a former Jim Baker, who used to be the acting head of the panel, is semi-retired up there doing some practice. So they talk to people. Last year we added a couple of people to our family court panel from Cortland. We screen people, and they tend to spread the word. And it's mainly, I think our success is the increase in rates, the increase in the 18B rates has made it a lot more attractive. Plus, kind of historically, I think the benefits using our state grant money, supports we can provide to practitioners, and then finally the work environment here. I think a lot of attorneys enjoy practicing in Tompkins County compared to some of the other counties. In terms of just the judges are easier to work with. So just historically, the work environment helps. But the main thing is the rates, has really helped pull people in and get them engaged.
And in the way of advertising, can you share with us the rates again?
It's sure, yeah. It's $158 an hour. I know there's some talk of the legislature. I don't expect that to really go anywhere, of raising it to $164, which is the federal rate. People were pushing for a COLA so that it's not every 14 years, but I suspect it's going to continue to be $158 for a while on that, which is a nice increase for the attorneys. It starts to make it viable for them. Yet, in the big issue it helps us address, we'd lost a lot of our experienced attorneys, just as kind of a back to that, in the years prior, because the rates were so low, and we were losing people, experienced attorneys, to institutional providers, including our district attorney here, just to make him smile, but to a lot of similar like that, because an institutional provider, there he is, can offer health care or other benefits that they don't get, and frankly, if you have a family, particularly younger kids, those are big issues. If, you know, working for an institutional provider, the cost of health care compared to if you're trying to buy a family package on the market and you don't qualify for the supports. So.
Yeah, I would just offer that when I started assigned counsel, it was $25 out of court, $40 in court.
Yeah.
But that was quite a while ago, so that wasn't a crazy rate at that time.
Yeah.
That's really good news. You know, at a prior meeting that I think you were not at, there was a discussion about our jail numbers and whether some of the count was due to the fact that assigned counsel was not available for court dates, and we were seeing delays as a result of that. And I wanted to give you a chance to respond.
I don't really think that. I mean, we have a plan in place. The main thing that happens where that would be an issue would be with felonies. And we have a plan in place where we encounter delays there in terms of assignments. One of the issues we have, and occasionally for everybody involved, is with the cap arraignments, town courts, particularly over the weekend, will set a very quick appearance on a prelim, which leaves us, you know, you come in Monday morning, and you've got a prelim in 8 hours or 24 hours. So the problem was with experienced attorneys, we have, with their caseload, oftentimes they'd be booked. I can't do that time. We have a coverage plan, so we may not have a permanent attorney in place, but we'll have someone there for the appearance to work through those issues. I can go back and look at it. I don't think we've had a really major issue with people. We prioritize our criminal cases, particularly people who are incarcerated because of that issue. Where we've had our biggest delays in assignment has been family court, more so. In part, looking back at 2023, there were a variety of factors for that coming out of the pandemic. And then we had, the courts were backlogged enough, so like they were setting initial appearances. For instance, if someone came in, they'd come in and apply in July, their initial appearance would be in September. And it was more difficult with our family court attorneys because they're booked saying, I can't take anyone, a delay in getting them assigned, which we've worked on. We've been able to add, you know, some people there to help work on that caseload. And the other thing it does, most of these new attorneys we've added are going to be on the criminal side, but what that allows us to do is, because we have practitioners who do both, we can adjust caseloads, take people off these lower level misdemeanors and so forth, and give them family court cases and so forth. The other issue I think is important, adding these attorneys, the other problem we saw with felonies, frankly, were conflicts. You know, I have a case I'm carrying now with co-defendants, and I had that simply because we ran out of, because of conflicts, because of the co-defendants who have been through the system a couple of times. We conflicted out most, and we're in family court as well. We conflicted out most of our panel. Everyone who was qualified to do that, so it's on that.
Okay. Do you have an optimum number you're looking for the panel, or a minimum number?
A minimum, we're over our minimum number.
What is that?
Well, we're at about it, in terms of being able to operate. We have now probably about 20, We have about 26 people who do criminal law. Our core panel, we have about 50 attorneys total. But we break that down into, we have some people who just do criminal practice, some who just do family court practice, and we have some who take cases but aren't part of the core. They don't take a lot of cases. That's why our core, the core of our criminal panel now is in the low 20s. We're building them up. The core of our family court panel is probably about the same. I'm double counting there a bit, but we're building that out. So the main problem we have had, and why these new attorneys will help, are conflicts in the criminal panel. You can you get a case with the right co-defendants, and all of a sudden you've conflicted 12 or 13 attorneys out, and then you're trying to assign someone who's competent. The case where I picked up the two co-defendants, well, they had parole violations, so they're back in prison, but we're looking at significant prison time on that, which means you need to have someone competent handling the case to deal with it. You don't want, the worst thing you can do from my perspective is assign someone who's not really qualified. Quality representation lacks, but then also you start to create issues of reversible error, and you don't want a case, you don't want someone poorly represented where it goes up to the appellate division and in a couple of years it comes back and they tell you try again, basically, on that.
Okay.
That was kind of a long-worded way. I hope I answered your question.
No, that's helpful background. And that leads, if anybody else has questions, please jump in. But I did want to point out that we are going to be looking at our 2024 goals for the committee today. And one of them does involve assigned counsel. And it's looking at assigned counsel versus a public defender model. And I'd love to get your thoughts on that. And of course, we're not making a decision. We're trying to decide, do we want to examine this year?
I can give you an update on that because I'd had talks prior with Lisa and Bridget, and I'm actually working on a report for them. It's in progress. It'll lay out kind of all the foundationals. These are the alternative models, and give you estimates of staffing requirements on that. There are a couple of issues there, and what I've done in part, I've worked with the state to get an estimate from ILS on our caseload, what they would require or tell us we would have to have in staffing. I've looked at, I went back, Ray Slaughter led a report a few years, 2010 I think it was, on related stuff, and looked at that issues, and I used a couple of those counties because at least one of them went to a public defender, Ontario County, which will provide you with a nice comparison. I think you can look at that report, look at this, to give you background information on that. So, and Bridget and I had just talked yesterday a bit, and that should be ready in a couple of months. It's something I've been working on in addition to everything else, trying to pull together and give you background, and a couple of things, types of things I'll be telling you. There are caseload standards in place, relatively new ones the state requires. They're tougher on institutional providers in adhering to those than assigned counsel programs, because they'll frankly tell you we can't really monitor an assigned counsel because attorneys are doing private work and public work. They're not necessarily really, they recognize a weakness there, but they are tougher on that in terms of hiring. There are issues of they want to toughen the caseload standards. they're not doing that right now because public defender offices are already having problems, counties are already having problems meeting those requirements. But there are a number of things. I'm trying to give you a thorough background so you can decide.
Well, let me interrupt you just for a second, because it sounds like you're well-placed to provide us this information, if that's the will of the committee. So if I could just back out and ask the committee members, in terms of committee goals for this year, are you interested in looking at the assigned counsel program and in comparison to a public defender model? Veronica?
Yes, I am. And I think starting with this information that you're beginning to give us now, but like with dedicated time to it, would be a good place to start.
All right, Mike and Shauna, do you have views on this?
I always think it's good to look at options.
Yeah, Shauna, if you could say that again.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be good to look at options.
Okay. And Mike?
I think it'd be best if I don't step on Shauna next time. But yeah, I think it's a good idea to look at this.
Okay.
You know, I've definitely seen it work in other counties, but I don't know if it'll work here, so it'd be a good thing to look at.
Okay. Well, I think that's the answer then. This would be very helpful to us, Lance, if we can schedule that in a month or two and take a good look at it. So, great. Okay. Are there questions for our Director of Assigned Counsel? Anything further? Okay. Well, while we're waiting for quorum, we could go to our discussion of committee goals, and I'd start at the beginning and just go through them, because we don't need to take any specific action, but we can have the discussion about them. The first one is monitor to the capital program at the jail to address needed upgrades. And of course, there is construction work going on now that we probably should get a report on. And there's also in the Facilities Committee, or Facilities and Infrastructure Committee, I should use their formal name, we have passed them the torch with the memo we prepared on functionality at the jail. And we should probably try to get an update on how that is proceeding sometime during the year. So that makes sense to me, but I'd like to make sure that the rest of the committee members are in line with doing that this year. Crickets? Does this make sense? Veronica?
Honestly, I spaced out for the most important part of what you were saying, which is what is facilities and infrastructure's like
They took
plan timeline maybe? Like, is this going to come back to us this year even?
I think we just need to keep track of it. It may not come back to us this year. Certainly because of the Center of Government project, we've moved around the timeline a bit. So it's not as urgent. Oh, we have quorum. Thank you, Shauna. Really appreciate you coming in. We are now an official meeting. Okay. Thank you. And I realize you turned around. You were driving somewhere. I appreciate you doing that. We were talking about the capital program at the jail. And I was saying I think we probably should be keeping track of what F&I is doing and also looking at the current construction project. So, I see you nodding yes.
Sense.
Veronica, that makes sense. Mike? Is that a reasonable goal that we take a look at that? Okay. The next one is assess reimagining public safety outcomes and determine next steps. And of course, we have entered into the Reimagining Public Safety project as a county, but also we've taken a lot of steps in conjunction with the city on a 3-year pilot. This is the 3rd year of the pilot, 2024. So it's not clear how we proceed in 2025. So again, this seems like a fairly straightforward undertaking that we really do need to look at this and figure out what our next steps will be. And I'd welcome comment. Shauna?
Yeah, I think that over the past 2.5 years, we went through Reimagine Public Safety knowing that there were going to be some things we were going to love about it, some things we might not care for. And the great thing is, I think we've experimented, we've had some successes, we've had some failures, and there has definitely been some apprehension in our community. There's been a time of education and really good conversation. And it'll be up to this committee, I think, to figure out what we want to move forward with, what we want to continue to invest with. And so I'm glad we took the risks. I'm glad that we tried certain things that seem to be really popular and really be effective. But there are going to be some things that have not been working, and we just need to be really honest about that.
Thank you. Mike?
So yeah, I mean, you know, I like what Shauna just said. I think that we have seen a lot of success. I mean, I was at this at the Easter egg hunt, and I was talking to the chief of police, and he's talking about recruitment and how he's got a number of officers in the pipeline now, and that is like kind of exciting news, considering they've really worked on a low level of staffing, and I think a lot of people are getting burned out. Once you can see kind of that light at the end of the tunnel, and I think some of that has to do with the reimagining effort, right? That we've kind of turned the corner on some of these things. And certainly we've made advances at the Sheriff's Department, in large part thanks to Derek and Jen, here were the goals, what were the goals, how did we meet them? Now with all that said, it does appear that there is some, how to say that, community engagement is an area maybe we still need to work on. And I don't know if, I mean, certainly it's not something maybe we can check the box on, but I also don't think it's something that the different departments aren't working on. I mean, I think the Easter egg hunt was actually a pretty good example. And I know that there are other events. Around Christmas time, I saw our sheriff's deputies out in Dryden for, you know, a Santa Claus kind of thing. So I think they're trying to engage the community. I think the key for us now is how do we get the community kind of to engage with them. I think that is a step that needs to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I would echo what Shauna and Mike have just said. And prior to the meeting, I asked our clerks if they could dig up the resolution we passed in 2021, and we have paper copies here. But it's impressive of the many recommendations, and there were 17. Some of them are just county, some are just city, but we were able to accomplish a lot of what's on here so far. And of course, the year's not done yet. I think there hasn't really been a lot of public attention on the amount of work that came out of the reimagining resolution, both from the city and the county. But it's clear to me that we don't want to get to the end of the year and say, okay, we're done. I think this will continue in some fashion. And so us taking a good look at that during the year, again, seems like a fairly obvious goal for the committee from my standpoint. Veronica, do you have?
Yeah, I also think this is a clearly important goal for this committee. And in particular, I'd love to do it basically the way you laid out, Rich, I assume you wrote all this, in the milestones here, which say, review the 2021 resolution goals, the resolution you just mentioned, that are applicable to the Tompkins County Public Safety System and assess the status of implementation and impacts of each one. And I would love to prepare a written report on that. I don't know exactly who would do that, but living in this committee, I guess, to start, so that we would have something for the record. And I think the exercise of putting together a written document would allow us to be more thorough and honest with reviewing, more so than we might otherwise. I don't know, there were 5 recommendations that are county only, which the county could do ourselves. There are 12 that are county and city, and I don't know if that should be done jointly by the county or city, or just the county prefer. Like, from our vantage point, this is clearly only a partial view, but this is what we think has happened and not happened and whatnot. You have assessed the collaboration with the City of Ithaca Public Safety System as well as impacts on other police agencies in the county. I don't have a brilliant idea on exactly how to do that, but that sounds important too. And then prepare recommendations to the legislature for next steps following completion of the 3-year program prior to commencement of the budget review in September, which I also think is important and useful. And that gives us 5 months.
Yeah, we need to do this relatively soon. Several of these goals really do have September deadlines if we want to get into the budget cycle. So the timing matters. Yeah. Okay, well, it seems like we have consensus on that one. Lisa.
I would say too, I know the sheriff has been preparing or has prepared a kind of year-to-date update as to progress there, and the CJC and county administration is working and finalizing a kind of report as to where things are. So that's forthcoming.
Okay. What kind of timeline do you think you're on to be comfortable talking to us about that?
We're trying to pull together budget. The final pieces involve budget expenditures, what we've expended year to date and so forth. I would say in the next couple of weeks.
Okay. So we even could do it in April, but certainly May.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And as I said, I think we have consensus on that. The next proposed goal is monitor the implementation of the Rapid Medical Response Program. And again, that's a brand new initiative that the county is engaged in. I think we're going to get a report on where that's standing today, but as an ongoing matter, it seems like this is something we as a committee should be paying attention to, but I'd welcome comment there. Yeah. Okay.
I have a question. Rich, are your priorities in priority order as far as how much attention is going to be spent?
They are not.
Okay.
They're just just out there. And frankly, that one probably we don't need to hear about very soon because it's just launching. We're hoping to see an April 1st launch date or thereabouts. So later in the year, we'd have a much better sense of how is it going. On the other hand, we do have funding questions that we're going to have to address for 2025. So the timing will matter there. The next one is consider implementation of a youth respite facility within the county. And this arose because of a visit we had with Judge Scott Miller, who was talking about this gap in our ability to deal with youth. It also would be addressing, to some extent, to raise the age issue of not having a place to put youth who are involved somewhere in the criminal justice system. Shauna, I know you had comments about this. Do you want to speak?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I had comments and concerns in regards to this living in public safety, because initially the email that I had read stated that the kids that we're talking about were nonviolent and mentally stable youth. And I think that if we're talking about kids that are stable, that we shouldn't automatically criminalize them and have that conversation in public safety. Primarily, that work is done through our Department of Social Services, and that reports to HHS. In looking at like the full description, I mean, I definitely think this is important, and we've spun our wheels ever since I've been on this legislature as far as what to do with kids that have a run-in with the law and need a place to stay until we figure out where they need to go. I guess I question right now about like the bandwidth, because I know that we're dealing with some shelter issues. We're trying to figure out where to park that. And I know that administration with center of government with everything going on, I'm just not sure if we have the bandwidth.
Okay. Thank you. Mike or Veronica?
I think that the idea of a youth respite facility is not something that I want to get lost, even if it doesn't go anywhere this year. So I'm wondering, can we indicate some longer-term intention around this, or would it make sense to do any information gathering as we go through process for, such as around sheltering? Maybe these are actually like two very separate things. I don't know, that's a thing I would need to learn. Like, I guess I'm imagining considering the implementation of a youth respite facility, doing that a bit as maybe a good thing to do now, but not as a goal to like have some conclusion about it by the end of the year.
Well, probably by September, so that would be very ambitious.
Or, yeah.
Mike, did you have thoughts?
Yeah, no, I definitely think I don't want to move this onto a back burner. I think it is something. I mean, I was talking to people today, and they mentioned this actually. They had a 13-year-old, mental health issues, didn't know where their grandmother couldn't handle them. What do we do? I mean, there's a lot of needs within that group, that set of people. So, yeah, I mean, I don't really want a back burner. I do understand about bandwidth. We have a detox center that I don't know what's going to happen there. We were talking about a mental health facility, and that could actually benefit this very same group of people. So yeah, we just have a lot of moving parts, but I think this could be one of those moving parts. I think we have people that are interested in the community that want to invest time in this.
Okay. Dan, I saw your hand up. Did you have something you wanted to share?
Yeah, thank you. I don't want to speak out of turn, but
Oh, go ahead.
I think if you look at the massive expense that it would entail for the county to operate its own respite and detention facility, we're overlooking a much simpler and more cost-effective option that a lot of other counties are doing, which is contracting with the providers to always have a bed accessible to you. So now that I've queried a few of my counterparts from other counties who I know do contract for respite detention beds. And we also need to consider respite and detention are two very, very different things. But if you're talking about a facility that you have to own brick and mortar, you have to staff 24/7 with multiple people, follow all kinds of OCF regulations, versus just spending a lot less money to contract for a bed so it's available when you need it. I think that's a way more cost-effective approach to this for the taxpayers, and probably Department of Social Services should be brought into this too, because KIT has her own regulations and impacts that this would involve. And I don't think that we have the numbers of youth that need that at any given time that we could keep a facility filled.
Okay, Judge Miller was saying he thought you could have up to 20 kids. So, yeah, I think there's some question there. But the issues you're...
Tompkins County has put one youth in respite in the last 3 years.
Okay. Okay, Mike.
No, I mean, I think that's worth investigating, Dan. If that is a way that we could go, if that would be a path forward, I don't have any objection to that. Do you have, you had said some other counties are doing this. Can you shoot us over? I mean, not now. Can you send us later maybe just a county example, and we'll look into contacting somebody within that county and kind of see how they do it? Would that be a good kind of next step?
I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, Dan.
I believe Judge Miller may be trying to get a group together to talk about this issue. And maybe that's the way to deal with the bandwidth, is to stay in contact with that group and maybe have a liaison from public safety keeping track of that and reporting back to us. You know, Shauna.
I would just ask that KIT is part of that group, because it seems like there's been some operating in silos. And I mean, the people that I've spoken with in regards to this is, the mindset is you're kind of warehousing kids, and it doesn't really help them as far as giving them the skills they need to operate within a family, within a community. And I just don't think the county wants to get into that business. I mean, having a kid in a foster home is really so much more ideal than having them in, what we would have called years ago an orphanage.
Yeah. My understanding, this is very temporary, that it is not long-term. It's so oh, Kit Kephart is here. We have a special guest star, and I'm going to call on Kit. Please jump in.
I am not sure, I'm honored to be referred to as a star, but I'm not sure I'm going to be your star. But I appreciate the conversation, and I've been following the meeting, but doing that on YouTube. So I've been kind of hearing the conversation. I just wanted to offer that. So we currently, I think people are aware, but if you're not, we currently are contracting with Cayuga Homes for a respite bed. And we, just to give people a kind of a quick snapshot, we have since the second quarter of last year, which is when we started contracting with them for that respite bed, we have had and placed 5 kids in respite. Keep in mind that the respite bed for the most part the respite bed is highly regulated by OCFS. There are very specific regulations, which honestly I'm not even going to try to speak to today because I don't have them on the top of my head. But what I will say is that for the most part, our Raise the AIDS kids are not going to be able to go into a respite bed. It doesn't, other than a few very extraneous circumstances, it doesn't apply to them. So respite, usually the way that we are using respite, and most of the time the way we are going to be using it, is either for a child where there is no placement, they are coming out of another placement and they really need someplace temporarily to go. Or the other big use that we have is to preserve that, preserve a foster family situation or preserve a home situation. So you have sometimes a child that gets placed in foster care, but the foster parents are exhausted, they're struggling, they need a break, and we kind of use respite as a reset. Or, similar situation, you have a family that is really struggling and needs a break, and everybody, the child and the parents need a way to kind of take a break, restructure things, and then come back together. So most of when we think of respite, we like to think of it kind of as a catch-all, that we'll be able to utilize it for a really wide swath of kids, and it is much more limited than that. The age range is 11 to 18, but there have to be very specific qualifiers. One of those is that respite can only be voluntary. So we can't place a child involuntarily into respite. So the parent and the child has to agree. So I hope that helps to kind of give some structure and to know that we have a pretty successful contract right now with a close county. And although, obviously it'd be great to have the child right in our own county, but it's very close. And we've used it relatively few number of times for, over a good chunk of time that we've been trying this. So I hope that information helps.
That is helpful, Kit. And if I could just follow up, what county are we talking about?
Cayuga.
And I'm curious if you think, if we did have an option here in Tompkins County, would there be more utilization? Is part of the reason the numbers are fairly low is that it is Cayuga County?
So I'll be honest, I would have concerns about us investing. I think as Dan pointed out, it's a pretty significant undertaking getting approved by OCFS. There would need to be a whole
different question though. Different question. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what I would say is I would have concerns about us being able to maintain that program and get enough utilization.
Okay. Given all that's been shared here, maybe this is not yet ripe and that we let Scott Miller's form a group and talk further about this, and perhaps it comes back to us. but that we try to keep track of it to see where that is proceeding. It does seem like, as Kit said, it would be better if we had this locally available. It just might be too heavy a lift, though. It seems to be the current thinking.
I just want to be clear. I wasn't saying, I'm saying ideally we'd have all the services we needed, you know, right in our own county all the time. I think that what we have contracting with Cuba Centers works really well. I'm not saying that.
Okay.
I would say that we need that program here.
Okay. For purposes of the Public Safety Committee, what's the thinking? Do we drop this out as one of the priorities for 2024, or do we keep it being aspirational? What, thoughts? Go ahead, Veronica.
I guess given this, I'd support returning to this in 2025 or getting some
more information
update from, I don't know if it's Judge Miller's group and or just Kit coming back to share how the contract with Cayuga Centers is going.
Okay, Shauna? Sorry.
Mid-cracker. I would also like to see this dropped, and if it is taken up, I would like to see it taken up in HHS.
Okay, Mike?
No, I mean, I think that's a reasonable position. What they both just said, I mean, based on the new information, but I also don't think that there's any reason that if people want to look into something and approach us with an idea,
Oh, absolutely.
If Judge Miller wants to take the torch on that, there's no problem with him doing it.
Absolutely, Mike. That's a very good point. I'd be happy to have Judge Miller come back and talk with us. And I would certainly give him time on the agenda to do that if he had something to bring to us. Okay, good. And then let's see, the next priority is monitor the implementation of the new functionality entailed in the new detox and stabilization capabilities for people experiencing addiction and or a mental health crisis. When I wrote this, the world was different. And here we are now, but this does seem to be, in my view, should remain one of our priorities this year, is to try to figure out where is all this going and try to get to a more functional result. But I'd welcome comment from others. Mike.
I was just thinking, I mean, it would be great if we had maybe Marty Stallone or somebody from the hospital come in and see what their plans were for like the mental health unit. I mean, I think we're probably already doing that. I don't know if we're doing it through this committee. But, I know we talked about that at the community fund yesterday, and that funding source of kind of where are we with that project.
Okay. Lisa, did you have something?
Just that the whole health department, particularly mental health as the local government unit under OASIS, is going to be the entity charged with determining whether the services previously provided by the ADC, whether there's a local need for them, which we believe that there is, and likely issuing RFPs for those services to organizations in the community or outside of the community to provide them. So I just wanted to make this committee aware that that is taking place under whole health, which would again be under, or an overlapping issue with Health and Human Service Committee.
Shauna, did you have thoughts?
Yeah, I was just at the Board of Health, and Frank made that announcement that there's going to be an RFP for I think there are 3 different services that ADC provided, and it's going to be a request for proposals from community members to step in and provide those services. So hopefully this will not be like doors closed, it will be doors open, but under a different provider is the thought.
Yeah, and I'm not sure there's much committee action to be taken, and this again is one of these issues that straddles with Health and Human Services, but it sure seems like something we should be paying attention to and getting reports on. So there seems to be consensus there. The next one is monitor the gun-involved violence elimination grant program. And our sheriff is with us today, and I think is going to give us a report on that. But that it has been a major initiative in 2023, and it's continuing in 2024. The grant, I believe, is due this week or the next, or the grant application. And we're working in collaboration with the city to do that. But as this seems to be a major initiative and it's had some real impacts in the community, this seems like a pretty obvious one for us to look at. But again, I'd welcome comment. Okay, I sense consensus. And then we already discussed the last one, which is the looking at assigned counsel and the public defender model. And it sounds like our director of assigned counsel's prepared to bring us information on that very soon. So as we talked about early on, I took the first crack at drafting priorities. But if anybody, any committee member or any of the departments have other ideas of things we should be looking at, you know, don't be shy. Can anybody think of anything else that we're missing? That's a pretty full plate, frankly. So I think we've got a lot to give our attention to. And then starting the meeting over again, we had one public comment, and because we didn't have quorum at the time, I indicated that person could come and speak to us when we had quorum, and we do. Amanda, did you wish to address the committee again?
Sure. How often does a member of the public get 6 whole minutes? I'm Amanda Kirch-Kessner. I live in the town of Ulysses, and I came today just to share some reflections on public safety and how I feel like we've expended a lot of resource on public safety over the past few years, and I'm really sorely disappointed by what I see reflected by local elected people in response to actually bolstering and supporting our local public safety officers. Namely, just lens through my experience going to the Easter egg hunt hosted by the Ithaca Police Benevolent Association on Sunday, which was a very diverse and well-attended event. As witnessed, Anna Ortiz had a bunch of kids come down from her program who the officers provided transportation to. I think it was a really great way to start building trust with what seems to be a pretty young department. There were lots of young, healthy-looking officers who were helping kids of all ages hunt eggs and win some pretty sweet prizes that were on offer. But what concerned me is that the county is paying for the CJC. I did not see CJC represented at all. I don't know if they were asked. I don't know what is happening there, but clearly there is some type of breakdown that is occurring between what the county and city might be trying to implement if it's not actually working with the local law enforcement agencies in a way that's actually cohesive and responding to what is needed. The other thing that was a really sore point of reflection to me is that there was only one elected person in our whole county who was there, Mike Sigler. I was kind of appalled. Not a single city official, not a single representative from the city, be it a county legislator, the mayor wasn't there. Phoebe Brown's the representative to the community police board. She wasn't there. Like, nobody was there. And I was just kind of heartbroken at that. I'm like, what is going on? And then I did ask, I said, I don't know if you want to respond to mental health crises with people who have weapons and drug addiction struggles. I know that I'm not equipped to do so, and I find that I'm pretty well equipped to respond to most things, but that's what our public safety officers are asked to do daily, sometimes multiple times a day, sometimes multiple times a shift at this point. And I did think about playing CCR's Run Through the Jungle, which I know is about Vietnam, but it's about to get warm, folks. And I've driven through the West End on a warm day, and I am concerned because enabling people to suffer with mental health crises and addiction is not compassionate. It is enabling, and we need to knock it off. And people won't come to Ithaca if they know that we're gonna force them to clean up. And I know they say you can't force it, but the thing is enabling people to live in I mean, it looks like they're living in dumps in the worst parts of the world that we've seen highlighted on commercials in our own backyard. I could walk there in probably 5-10 minutes and be surrounded by absolute filth and public health hazard. So Ithaca's the heart of our community. Our heart is in pretty sore shape right now. Please, what do we have to do something? Because I know there's lots of people who would be willing to help support you in being more proactive. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And just let's pick up our agenda and keep going. Minutes approval. We have minutes of February 29th, 2024. Shauna moves. Veronica seconds. Questions or comments on the minutes? Are you ready to vote? I'll call Mike. Yes, you're on mute, but I'll take that as a yes. Shauna?
Yes.
Yes, sorry.
Veronica?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. We have appointments to the Advisory Board on Indigent Representation. We have Aubrey Hetznecker, John Fitzgerald, Jason Leifer, and Joseph Kirby. And I can say I was a practicing attorney here when I remember one of these people was born, who is now a practicing attorney here in town. It's fun to see the progress. At any rate, could I get a motion to approve these appointments? Veronica moves, Shauna seconds. Any questions, comments on these nominations? Okay, Mike.
Yes.
Shauna.
Yes.
Veronica.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Great. We've covered the Public Safety Committee 2024 goals. And next up is County Administration, and Lisa is with us. Welcome.
Thank you, Rich. I just have a quick update, and that is on the meetings with municipal elected officials on the Rapid Medical Response Program. We did have an initial meeting on February 29th. We're having a follow-up meeting on April 11th to continue discussion around cost-sharing models. And at the request of those who attended, and it was very well attended, I would say, we have compiled and shared information about the local tax impacts for cost sharing versus if the county were to pick up the cost. And that was requested and has been shared with the municipal elected officials and will probably be the point of discussion at the next coming meeting. So that's all I have to report.
Okay. Questions or comments for County Administration? Seeing none, we can proceed to the Sheriff's Office. And I see our Sheriff and our Undersheriff are with us. Welcome.
Hey, Rich. Thanks for having us. Just a couple quick updates, and then if you like, I can jump into the updates. So.
Yes, if I could invite your comment on your new dashboard capability in your comments on use of force as well. So.
Yeah. Our dashboard transparency hub, we're continuing to work on that. As you know, I think our care team data is up there. Our defensive action report or use of force is all on there. As far as the use of force one, we're working on creating a new format for 2024 to get the data more on there quicker. Right now, we only have data up through 2023, so that should be completed here pretty soon, and then everything will upload to that more routinely. And we're going to continue just plugging away at all these different hubs we got on there. As we go on, we find out or keep finding or coming up with new ideas, I should say, on other things we can include on there. So trying to put the brakes on just a little bit and catch up what's already there showing, and then maybe utilize some new ideas to add even more. So I think I mentioned the sheriff clerk data is also on there. We finally got our civil service test results back for that unit. We've had one member assigned, Sam Pulliam, as a sheriff clerk. He did pass the test, which is a really good thing. So we'll be able to keep him, and we will be able to move forward with interviews to fill that second spot. So that's been a really long time coming. We're excited about that. Couple community engagement type things. We took part in the Special Olympics polar plunge last weekend, several members. We're dumb enough, I would say, to jump into the lake this time of year. But that's a thing we do every year. And as you know, with Easter coming up and the mention of the Easter egg hunt downtown, we started a program quite a few years ago now, distributing Easter baskets to kids identified by both DSS, mostly in our shelters, and the Advocacy Center. And the program has exploded. They've been working all day today on putting these baskets together. We're up to 85 this year, when in the past we only had, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6. So it's definitely taken off and turning out to be a really good thing. That's all I got as far as my report. I can jump into give, unless you have any questions for me or anything else you'd like me to address.
I guess I'd just say I think you're being a little bit modest on your dashboard, that with close to 18,000 public interactions, you had 41 use of force incidents, largely connected to arrests. And, you know, that's some data that I think most members of the public would just never guess at, how rare it is for a police officer to actually use force, that so much of what is accomplished is done just by direction when it's needed, and often not even that. And it does, as you put in your report, I think it does speak to the professionalism of the officers. So I wanted it said out loud. So yeah, thanks for putting that data out there.
I think unfortunately, you know, there's a lot of misperceptions out there, you know, due to the media and, you know, television shows are a big one. It's not, you know, really reality I've seen in my 25 years now of being in law enforcement. But yeah, it does speak volumes to the people here, and I've always expressed the fact that, you know, our deputies, you know, with 3 or 4 out on the road at any given time in the county, they work alone, you know, and that really adds to their ability to communicate and de-escalate situations, because they often have to, by necessity, not having backup, you know, very close. It just kind of creates that type of environment where they really learn to talk to people and calm situations down, so they don't have to use force, and I think that's a good thing.
Mike.
I just wanted to ask you, I had heard that your deputies were out at Dryden schools today with the K-9 unit. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, I believe there was a detail set up. We do have 2 K-9s now. One is geared towards bomb detection, things of that nature. The other one is more drug related. They're both out there. They're both certified now, one just recently, and they're doing a lot of...
clarify, this was a friendly visit. No.
Yeah, no, they're all friendly visits. I mean, we have really, really nice, cute dogs compared to some agencies that help us build community relations and things like that. The kids like seeing them. So yeah, we do a lot of that stuff. And as you know, we've tried to improve our relationships with the different school districts in the county over the last several years. It's not uncommon for our deputies to be at all our schools and walk in, check with kids, check with staff, do a walk around, park in the parking lots. So yeah, it's just an extension of that.
Yeah. I would mention I was fortunate the new city police chief gave me some time this morning, and we sat down, and one of the things we talked about was give, and it sounds like that's moving forward. Sheriff, why don't you jump into that topic?
Yeah, if I could just give you an overview, as I think everybody recalls, but I'll recap it briefly. The Gun-Involved Violence Elimination Initiative came to us through New York State Division of Criminal Justice Services. It's not something that law enforcement sought out. It was, we were identified as a community that may need assistance in this area by DCJS. We received up to $380-some thousand. It was quite extensive. At the time, it was actually directed towards the city of Ithaca and the Ithaca Police Department. Their staffing being what it was, they didn't feel like they were in the best position to take it on at the time. Yes, we got the money diverted to the county, and we started our first task force action July 2nd of 2023. And it's not just, law enforcement initiated, it's really a partnership that we created with Matt at the DA's office, Dan Cornell at Probation, parole got involved. We established a new and good relationship with the Southern Tier Crime Analysis Center. And at the time, we did some stats, and we found in the city of Ithaca from, April 2022 to April of 2023, there was 58 shots fired calls that were received, and that was a lot. They weren't all in the media, but we knew in law enforcement that we were seeing these come in very frequently on a weekly basis. And these weren't all incidences where somebody was necessarily hurt, but shells were found at the locations these happened, vehicles were hit, things of that nature. So it was really kind of a scary time in my view, and I felt like we had to take some action to get this under control. And the way we did that was focusing on people. We working all together, we identified the players that we felt were involved in drug activity and gun violence, created like a top 10 list, so to speak, and really tried to hone in on paying some attention to those folks rather than just arbitrarily pulling cars over and going after everyone. And we also focused on hotspot policing, where these incidences were most likely to occur based on past history. And, we had really a large degree of success, I'd say. Not only have the shots fired really waned, from July 2nd of 23 to March 1st, just a couple weeks ago, to read off some stats, arrests, we had 12 violation charges, 89 misdemeanors, 30 felonies. We took 12 firearms off the street, all kinds of additional weapons like kung fu stars, blackjacks, metal knuckles, a whole bunch of ammunition. Because this violence is often associated with drug dealing and drug activity, we also took over 184 grams of meth off the street, over 15 grams of heroin, over 145 grams of cocaine, 74 Xanax pills, Oxycontin pills, 11 grams of fentanyl, and mushrooms, and 87 Suboxone pills. So I think it's had a huge impact. You mentioned the city of Ithaca, and I said that the grant was initially targeted towards the city of Ithaca because that's where most of these problems were occurring. We just got notification of the grant award starting for next July, this coming up July. The application is due April 2nd, the initial draft, and I think the final draft of it is about 2 weeks after that. City of Ithaca, IPD, they do want to maintain the grant going into next year. So the chief at IPD is going to be making the grant application this time around and organizing how the funds are spent. And I believe we'll probably have less involvement as the sheriff's office in this going forward. But they're still working out the details of the budget. So we'll see what happens.
Okay. And just to comment further, what's happened with shots fired? Have we seen a reduction there?
Yeah, I can say from a practicality standpoint, the calls don't seem to be coming in like they used to. I haven't actually pulled numbers to look at it in quite some time, so I can't speak definitively, but we're all well aware when these calls would come in, and they definitely seem to have decreased pretty steadily.
Okay, Mike. Shauna.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's an old hand. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I was wondering about the Suboxone. I guess my question is, I know that that's used to reduce overdose and help people wean off drugs. I guess I'm wondering where the criminality of having Suboxone why that would be on your list of drugs that are taken.
I will let my resident drug recognition expert under Shurtleff answer that, if that's okay with you, Jen.
Yeah, no, I mean, it just has to do with diverting it. If it's not being used by the person it's prescribed to, and they're diverting it and potentially selling it or giving it to people that it's not prescribed to, and that it could be potentially harmful because it still is an opiate.
Yeah,
It might be, sorry, Derek.
Oh, it's okay, go ahead.
Just to jump in, that would only be counted if it was taken in the context of a drug arrest or gun arrest, including other narcotics like meth or fentanyl or heroin. So that's the context of it.
Okay.
If somebody's selling it on the street as opposed to using it for its intended purpose.
Okay. I mean, I guess I was just questioning, like, we want more of this on the streets, so people aren't dying. So why would we, I hate the idea of criminalizing something that could be saving lives.
We're not prosecuting that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and if they were legally prescribed that and had that in their possession legally, that's obviously not something we would pursue.
This is the secondary market, essentially. Yes? Yeah. Okay. All right. Anything further for our sheriff? Questions, comments? Okay. Let's keep going. District Attorney, welcome, Matt.
Derek, feel free to interrupt me, whenever you want. I owe you a couple. So thanks, Rich. We have 9 jury trials scheduled between next week and October 7th. So we're busy doing trials of high-level offenses. So that's a little busier than normal, but not unusual for the number of trials to have in 1 year. I'm still looking for one assistant DA, so anybody who knows anybody who wants to apply, who's an attorney, of course, please apply. Let's see, our dashboard is up and getting good feedback. We have 12 pages of data, and we're looking to expand it, working on some other ideas to expand to include more data for the community. And I guess the last thing I'll say, just to try to be as brief as possible, is that I'm encouraged by the progress of the community healing group of the CJC. I think we're finally at a point where we're going to start doing some things that the community will see, community meetings, town hall type meetings, where the community can interact with police officers, specifically from IPD, but we hope to expand it, and I will be part of those meetings as well.
Okay. Questions for our district attorney? All right. Seeing none, thank you, Matt. All right. And moving on, Department of Emergency Response. We have several resolutions, but Michael, I'd say welcome, and I see Joe is with us, and Jessica. Okay. Why don't you give your report first, and then we'll go to your resolutions.
So I really don't have anything to add outside of the Tom Stab report, but I would like to have Joe give an update on the Rapid Medical Response Program, and also just to extend a big thank you to all those that participated in our meet and greet last week with our new EMS personnel. So, Joe?
Yes, so our application is currently at the Bureau of EMS for our agency number. Last week we received endorsement from the Central New York region, and we should hopefully have our agency number in the next couple of days. All 9 of our staff members have been onboarded and are currently working to get the last few details in order. And we, at this point, are still aiming for a go live date of April 1st.
Okay. And thank you for organizing that meet and greet. That was great to get up there and be able to just have a direct conversation with all our new EMS personnel. It's really exciting to see the launch.
Awesome, thank you.
All right. Do we have questions or comments on the report? I did have a couple questions, but I'll go to the other committee members first. Anything? Oh, go ahead, Veronica.
You go first.
Okay.
Pages before mine.
All right. On the list of responses, we have Z-test call. And I was trying to remember, what is a Z-test call?
The test call is just strictly, we've got a plethora of different trainees, and when we are changing response plans, we just do test calls that don't actually get dispatched out, but they are still logged in our system and hold a ticket number.
Okay, so we don't need to know. Good. All right. And then on page 30, at the top, you've got compliance statistics, and I was wondering, what do those percentages mean?
So every month, the dispatch supervisors, as well as John Schaefer, they take a random sampling of all the calls that come into the dispatch center. And we have a quality assurance standards. So if they do not follow the proper protocols and the SOPs that we have in place for handling specific calls in a specific manner, then they get docked calls. So this is just a random sampling of the medical calls, the law enforcement, and then the fire calls. And out of those, there's typically 20 that are sampled and tested. And this is just the percentage of meeting those compliance statistics every single month.
Okay, it sure seems like they're doing pretty well under very stressful conditions. Veronica.
Can I make a small request about that graph? You stop me if I've said this before. If you're going to put it in a bar graph, can you make the scale start at 0? Because looking at it right now, I know this makes no sense if someone's looking at it. It looks as though the emergency medical dispatch calls are running only a third of the compliance level of the law enforcement calls. And that's not true. For those not looking, the EMS dispatch calls are at 94.66% compliant, and the others are only higher. So it is very good.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, thank you for that, Veronica.
And then on page 32, I was just wondering, how are the signups going for the first responder mental health and peer support courses?
For the specific classes that NILEAP is coming in for, we have maxed out 30 participants signed up for the individual peer support, as well as 30 participants for the group peer support. So we are at max capacity for both classes, which I am incredibly pleased about.
That is just wonderful news. Okay. All right, before I get to the resolutions, is there anything else? Veronica.
I was going to ask about, I guess ask the question Rich did about the courses. So good to hear they're maxed out. Do you know where the participants are coming from, like what their roles are that's bringing, like what's the distribution of agencies they work for, if any?
There's a wide variety between fire, law, and EMS. I don't know the specifics until we go into the class, because the vast majority, they just have their email addresses, and it may be a county address where they aren't asked to identify what specific agency. So after the April training, then I would be able to provide those specifics for the next meeting.
Sure. That's all the answer I was looking for. Thank you.
Okay. John, I see your hand.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Just for the benefit of the committee, in regards to the question on the statistics and the percentages articulated across the different disciplines, so it's not unfair surprise, John Schaefer, who is the assistant manager, and myself have been working to update the EMS side of the equation to new software. And with those compliance statistics, the company that we contract through that runs our emergency medical dispatch program has moved away from articulating compliance in percentage values. They've moved to wording, so unsatisfactory, partial compliance, things of that nature. So in subsequent TomStat reports that do come to the committee, you will more than likely see those percentages for that specific discipline disappear. And we'll have to work on how best to articulate that for the purposes of the report.
Okay, thank you. We'll pay attention. Michael, did you have something further?
No, sir. I just was thanking John for updating the committee on the change of the.
Okay. Then I have authorization to accept fiscal year 2023 State Homeland Security Program Grant, Department of Emergency Response, Doc ID 12281. Veronica moves, Shauna seconds. If somebody at Emergency Response could just talk about this resolution in connection to the next one, which is Doc ID 12283, because it looks like they're connected.
Sort of. The 2023 grant is the most recent grant that has been awarded, and we routinely go through these resolutions to accept the grant. This is a piece of it belongs to law enforcement, and a piece of it belongs to emergency response. Right now, we have it all lumped into emergency response funding, working with the Sheriff's Department to determine what percentage and what they're going to spend their portion of the money on. It's a routine grant that we get every year. As far as, do you want me to go into the other grant? You want to?
Sure. We'll vote on it in a minute. So yeah, why don't you talk about that one too?
So the other one is just a budget adjustment. This is to, for lack of any better term, to roll over previous grants that were accepted but not yet spent into the next budget year. Because we can't do rollover funds any longer, but they're grant funds that we just simply have not spent yet. They're multi-year grants. The projects just haven't been fully developed or fully spent out yet. So that's what the second resolution is for, is to just roll over those unspent grant funds into the next budget year.
Okay, that's helpful. So are we ready to vote on the first resolution? Questions?
Can I just ask, how much are we allowed to know about what the money's being spent on? This is, I mean this sincerely, I know. See, it's for like terrorism prevention and things that might be confidential, but I'm curious.
I can prepare something for the Public Safety Committee if you'd like. It's, as far as I'm concerned, it's public knowledge. Most of it goes to radios. There's some other pieces and parts to it, contracts for planning, some other equipment, fit testing equipment. There's a whole bunch of variety of different things, but I can certainly prepare a report for you and include it in our next update if you'd like.
If it's easy to do that, I'd be interested to see.
Oh, it's no problem.
Okay. All right. Are we ready to vote? And I see, there's Mike.
Yes.
Shauna.
Yes.
Veronica.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Okay, so we can move on to budget adjustment, Department of Emergency Response, authorization to transfer unspent grant funds, Doc ID 12283. And we just had a discussion on it, but if I could invite Veronica moves, Shauna seconds. Questions or comments? Are we ready to vote?
I'd just like to add, I do know that this is, it looks like a lot. That's multiple different grants. We receive like 6 or 7 grants. So this looks like a lot, but it's not really, since they're different grant.
Okay. Okay. Mike.
Yes.
Shauna.
Yes.
Veronica.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. And then we are up to additional positions, Department of Emergency Response, Doc ID 12284. And if I could get a motion, Shauna moves. Veronica, do you want to give me a second? Veronica seconds. And we had this, I believe, in Budget, Capital, and Personnel Committee, but if you somebody from emergency response could give us a very short reason why we're adding these positions.
Rich, it was really just a housekeeping issue. This will have no impact on the budget. It was just essentially to ensure that the part-time EMT staff that we're hiring can work 24 hours versus 20 hours, which was originally the way it was proposed in our initial resolution.
Okay.
But they won't be scheduled. So they're just moving the way we worked it out with HR and with leadership. We had to adjust how the language was written in the resolution so that we could actually schedule for 24 hours versus 20 hours.
Okay, any questions or comments? I'll call the vote. Mike? Did we lose Mike? I'm searching. I think we've lost Mike, so I'm going to go to Shauna.
Yes.
Veronica?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. And see, that's why we're very thankful that Shauna got here for quorum. Okay. And then we have budget adjustment, rapid medical response, doc ID 12285. And I believe this is really an accounting resolution, but correct me if I'm wrong. This is just setting up the line items we need for our new function.
You are correct. It was initially put into our functional unit 3410. We have created a new functional unit working with finance and administration to better track the expenses for the rapid medical response program. Incidentally, we did the same thing with grants. It just helps us better track the expenses related to that particular program. So we're just moving it from one functional unit to another.
Okay, and could I get a motion? Veronica moves, Shauna seconds. Questions or comments? Has Mike rejoined us? I don't see him, so I'm going to call Shauna.
Yes.
Veronica?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Okay. Any other report from Department of Emergency Response? All right, thank you, everybody.
Okay, thank you, Rich.
Yeah. We now have Department of Probation and Community Justice. And I see Dan is with us. And there's Carla. Okay, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'll give you the Cliff Notes version because we're past time here, I think. Or do we still have time?
We do have time. We do have time.
Thank you. I just wanted to, again, we're working on the probation department's portion of the GiveX grant application and working with Sergeant Meskel at the Sheriff's Department and others on that. We did meet with Kristen Morse, came over and spoke with the entire department. She's the new IPD CARES team worker. So we met with her about what her job role is, what her responsibilities are, and how we can access her service. So that's a welcome addition to the services that IPD's providing. I'm still trying to connect with Erica Catracci at CARS. I will not blame her for that. We've been playing phone tag, trying to get together and strategize on how we prioritize referrals to CARS now that they're the only game in town for outpatient substance abuse treatment. Recently recertified 2 security officers, one who's currently in that title and one who formerly was, in case the person who was formerly in the role needed to act as a security officer in an emergency. He'll retain his certification for the cost of $100 to the department, which I felt was a good investment for the additional option of utilizing him in that capacity if we needed to. We have one officer, brand new officer doing field training, one away for 3 weeks of fundamentals of probation practice. And that's my update.
Okay. Certainly looking at the numbers, it looks like they're fairly steady, that you're seeing about the same numbers of people coming to probation and moving through.
Yes, our investigations are down a little bit. It tends to happen this time of year after we clear the backlog at the end of the calendar year. Those numbers tend to go up. But we're in really good shape here now that we've got a full accompaniment of staff, and appreciate your support in that area.
Okay, any questions or comments for our probation department? All right. No? Okay. Well, thank you. All right. And it does look like, having heard from assigned counsel earlier, we are coming to the end of our public safety program. Is there any other business to come before the committee? Veronica?
I'd like to respond to our public commenter if
You're fully entitled to.
Okay. Thanks for coming, Amanda. And I'm glad to hear the egg hunt went well, and that a bunch of people were there. I guess Sigler's not in the room to thank him. A thing we've talked about here before is that sometime, it would be better if we had more legislator presence at community events in general. And sometimes, not all of us can go to all of them. Probably not most of, often not most of us can go to any given event. But I know, my colleague Annie has talked about, maybe we should coordinate this better. So maybe that is something for us to coordinate. I do think it was kind of a wild leap to make from there were no city electeds present at one Easter egg hunt to the entire state of the relationship between government and community and law enforcement is in utter disrepair. It might be in some disrepair, but it's not because some people didn't show up at one thing. I saw the event. I appreciate it's happening. Instead of going, I stuck to the things I had previously committed to doing on that day, which included knocking doors in Southside, carrying petitions for candidates who wanted to be on the ballot in some part of our criminal legal system, and then going to an alumni and current students meet and greet event with the EARS program at Cornell, the Empathy Assistance and Referral Service, where we all learned active listening skills to be peer counselors or mentors. It's looked different over the years, and it was really, really cool to be in a space with other people doing that kind of work, which I will say is public safety work of a sort. And, bummer I didn't go to the Easter egg hunt, but I'm not sorry about it because I liked what I was doing. And I don't track all my colleagues, but I'm sure they were doing productive things too, or just resting, whatever. I also just want us, and I'm not saying that that our commenter thinks this, but it's triggering a thing in our society that we think all the time, which is that public safety equates to police. And we've got to get over this idea that public safety begins and ends with policing. I think we all tend to that's what we think of when we think of public safety. And that tracks with the name of this committee, but the police are a piece of public safety, but just a piece. Healthcare is part of public safety. Unarmed and informal de-escalation is part of public safety, housing in all its forms, just strong community. There's so much to it. And I hope that we can all contribute to, in our many, many different ways to the safety of our community and our public spaces. That's not necessarily going to touch law enforcement for everyone, even for most people. Maybe for most people in this room right now, given I don't want to say it's the Public Safety Committee after just saying that, but given it's this committee, but it can look lots of ways, and I think we all do better to remember that.
Thank you, Veronica. And you do make a good point, that certainly over the years I've been privileged to work with the Public Safety Committee and I've gained a deeper understanding of just how complicated the system is and how integrated it is. And certainly some of the protests we've seen over the past few years, have really focused on police officers. And of course, police officers don't create laws. They, don't set policing priorities. Those generally come from, either the police chief or from legislatures or common council or some other body. And of course, police officers don't make decisions whether to prosecute or not, that goes to prosecutors, and then, of course, courts, who actually make the decision of somebody going to jail or prison. But we focus where we focus, and as I said, it is such a complicated system, and it bleeds out in lots of different directions, including, all of the supervision and the alternatives and everything that I think we do a relatively good job here in Tompkins County of maintaining that complexity and maintaining a lot of nuance in our system. But none of it's easy. And yeah, you have to watch over it pretty carefully. So thanks for talking about it. All right, anybody else? Anything further before we go off to our other pursuits? Okay, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved, seconded. All those in favor, we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.